Alright, hello everyone, it's Happy, and today we're going to be talking about the top 5 tanks which you guys should consider getting in the upcoming update of 10.3 because Wargaming buffed these tanks up a lot. Now these tanks are going to be much stronger than their peers, or they just got buffed up to a very good level. So we're going to be starting without wasting too much time, and at number 5 or number 1, basically whichever way you want to put it, I'm not trying to put these tanks in a sort of list or rating, we're going to be putting in the Leopard 1. Now, the gun depression has been nerfed from 9 degrees to 8 degrees, but that's completely okay because it's not like you really used the gun depression that much on the Leopard. It's not like the Leopard had crazy turret armor where you could sort of use your gun depression every game. You used it when you could. Of course, it's comfortable, but that's okay because in turn, we're getting a view range buff from 307 to 313. The reload time is being buffed, however, from 5.7 down to 5.4.5. So now the DPM has went up to 3,950. 3,950. The Leopard is literally going to shred tanks to pieces. The Alpha is 350 and the reload time is 5.45. Oh my god, this tank is literally going to rip tanks apart. If you come across a Leopard, you're pretty much dead, as any other medium, light, TD, heavy, whatever it is. If the heavy has a little bit less HP or similar amount of HP to the Leopard is pretty much going to shred it to pieces now. This is a very, very, very strong change by Wargaming. But I guess they're trying to make people, play the Leopard more because it's maybe underperforming compared to before, which sort of makes sense. Now, next we have the T62A. In this regard, there have been a lot of nerfs. There have been a few buffs to this tank. For example, the turn rate was nerfed on this tank. The engine power was nerfed from 650 to 620. The reload time was nerfed from 5.5 to 5.7. So therefore, this means that the DPM went down from 3,590 all the way to 3,458. And of course, the accuracy was nerfed a little bit. However, on the other hand, this tank gets some alpha damage, which is buffed up to 330 instead of 310. And of course, the infamous upper plate buff, which makes this tank super duper strong. Basically a Soviet E50M. Of course, the lower plate was also buffed, and then the turret front armor was buffed. So now it's going to be even stronger than before. And of course, the gun handling dispersion on the movement was also buffed. But the main thing here is definitely going to be the armor. Just look at this guy. This tank is literally going to be unstoppable against other mediums and lights. This is literally a, E50M in Soviet style made from stalnium, or however you want to pronounce it. This is literally insane. And this is only because of the armor. Of course, against a lot of TDs and heavies with high pen, you're not going to do much. But against mediums and lights, you're literally going to make them run away. You are making them scared because of how good this tank is going to be when it comes to the armor. And of course, the alpha buff is always appreciated, in my opinion. This is always a good thing to have. Next, we're looking at the VK90. So in this regard, again, the reticle calibration was removed, the sandbag armor was removed, and that's pretty much it for the nerf. When it comes to the buffs, the reactive armor consumable was added, and the combat stabilization mechanic is also added. However, the most important thing is that Wargaming thought this tank does not have enough armor. So let's give this tank more armor. The upper plate was buffed, making this tank juicy when it comes to the armor. And the lower plate was also buffed by a whole 18 millimeters. So when it comes to, of course, the angling part, the base millimeter increased by 14, but that's fine. When it comes to the armor, as I said, this tank is becoming crazy strong. Even the turret cheeks are going to be insanely strong nowadays, which really makes me wonder. When this tank angles itself, it's going to be extremely hard to penetrate it, not only for mediums, but a lot of heavy tanks and TDs with low pen as well, which is very, very crazy to me. Now, next up, we are definitely going to be looking at the T95 E6. And in my opinion, this tank got some very, very juicy changes. You guys know that the T95 E6 was not always my favorite tank. and that's because this tank is not the most good looking. The AP penetration was nerfed to 250 from 258, so just 8 millimeters, and the heat penetration was nerfed from 340 to 330. Again, these are not big nerfs, but in return, this tank got the ground resistance buff from 1.2 to 1.0 on hard terrain, which means it sort of moves a little bit faster on a lot of hard terrain. The combat stabilization was added. However, the most important thing is that this tank got an insane reload time buff. So it was buffed down from 7.6 to 7.2.5. So now the DPM on this tank is 3,300 instead of 3,100. 3,300 on a T95 E6, which is super duper fast already, makes this tank low-key a medium, but at the same time a heavy, and it's in that perfect sweet spot. Because this tank has some decent armor sometimes, which you can like bounce things off with just because of how troll it is. But also you have that mobility and super duper good gun handling. The gun handling is superb on this tank, as well as the gun depression, which allows you to do so many cool stuff, again, if you're good at the game. The T95 E6 literally got a pretty much free buff by Wargaming. And that is always nice to see, because it's not like this tank really was performing super duper well, and I would definitely say that you guys should try this tank out in the near future. Lastly, of course, we have the Object 260, and this tank has a few nerfs to it as well. So the engine power was nerfed from 1,120 to 980. Of course, the shell velocity was nerfed. I mean, it's not that big of a deal if you play to, if you play short range or mid range, then it's completely fine. And of course, the alpha was nerfed from 420 to 400, and of course on the respective shells as well. However, the upper plate armor was buffed to an incredible level. Now the 260 looks like its IS-7 brother, and it's much harder to pen by a lot of other tanks at its tier. The turret side armor was also buffed. The reload time was buffed from 8.4 down to 7.7 seconds. And this means that the DPM on base shells went up to 3,100 when before it was less than 3k. So that is a very, very, very good number. And of course, the HP was also buffed by a little bit. But in this case, I'm talking about the DPM buff, which is more than 3k now, 3,100 to be specific. And of course, the armor buff are really going to change a lot, because the shell velocity isn't really going to change much. Maybe the engine power will make this tank a little bit sluggish, but it's still not going to be slow. It's an Object 260, for God's sake. And you have that very good DPM, as I said, and the combination of armor and its usual good characteristics of gun handling are going to make this tank super duper deadly. So with that, these are my top 5 tanks for this update. So there's only 2 tech tree tanks and 3 collectible / premiums. And I guess that sucks, but it is what it is. And if you have other suggestions, please smash them in the comment section below. And of course, hit that like button. Happy is out, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.